Within the boundaries of the Honkai series, there has never been a more tragic yet beautiful relationship than the one between a Kaslana and suffering. Whether that's a man who carries the hopes and dreams of his era into a new world, or a man who is so desperate to stall the birth of a disaster to the point where he's willing to repeat the same cycle of suffering over and over, desperately clinging to the hope that maybe, someday, someone will show and break the chain of suffering that entangled his world. Just how today's sponsor can break the chain on your wallet and can allow you to top up in-game at a much cheaper price. Wait, how did I get this monthly card? Well, it's thanks to today's video sponsor, topuplive.com. If you want to top up just like I did now, all you have to do is open your browser, go to topuplive.com, and there you can find 100 of the most trending games and apps in which you wanna top up. Just select Honkai Star Rail, or any other game for that matter, select your pack, carefully enter your Honkai Star Rail UID if you buy for Star Rail, hit buy, and boom! Stellar Jades or monthly cards straight to your account. You can also use my promo code HOMU to get a 12% discount. Thousands of gamers use this website to buy jades at a cheaper rate. The website can 100% be trusted and has a ton of positive reviews that you can check out for yourself before buying to have an ease of mind. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and don't forget to use my promo code HOMU for a 12% discount. Thank you topuplive.com for sponsoring this video. The beauty of a true Kaslana lies in the tragedy they face, a tragedy in which they always rise up to become heroes and save everyone no matter the cost. It's a name that symbolizes perseverance, hope, and most of all, a will that carries all the burdens of humanity. In this sense, both Phainon in Honkai Star Rail and Kevin in Honkai Impact 3rd are perfect examples of how a Kaslana will always hold the burden of humanity and become the deliverer who paves the path forward. Welcome! In today's video we'll take a look at both Phainon and Kevin and talk about how their stories parallel each other in both games. First and foremost, let's talk about how Kevin and Phainon are represented in both games and also about how the name Kaslana or Kaslana, depending on the game, carries a similar meaning yet in a different form. In Honkai Impact 3rd, the name Kaslana is passed down to Kevin Kaslana's descendants. In the last moments of the previous era, Dr. May used Kevin's and her own genes to create a test tube baby because, well, Kevin was unable to have kids, or touch anybody for that matter, due to his mantis powers. That child ended up among the few who survived the calamity of the previous era and was transported to the current era, where he would be named Adam Kaslana and be the first among Kevin's descendants who carried the Kaslana bloodline. As time passed, Kevin detached himself from his family, and although he took up the name Kaslana, he was so tormented by guilt that he never thought that he deserved to lead a happy life alongside his family in the new era. The only instance we see Kevin interact with the Kaslana family was when he was trapped into the Sea of Quanta and made contact with Siegfried to teach him how to access his dormant powers. The Kaslanas are one of the three major families in Honkai Impact 3rd, alongside with the Apocalypse family and the Shariak family. They are a family of very strong and talented warriors, but at the same time they are very rash, oftentimes charging into a battle without a solid plan, resulting in a lot of casualties. It was quite common for Kaslanas to die young. The name was both a blessing and a curse, and you may say, "But Homu, Kevin is not like that, he's very cold, serious and calculated." I mean, yes, the Kevin that we know now. But remember, he didn't start like this. Kevin in his younger years was the textbook definition of what a Kaslana should be. He only started to act like this after he went through the pain caused by the Honkai, became a mantis and started losing the friends and the people around him. And you can see the same thing happening to other Kaslanas to some extent, but mostly with Kiana. As she goes through her struggles and becomes more mature, she gets a lot colder and closes herself up. Of course, luckily for her, she had people around who supported her and she was able to bounce back. But if nobody was around her, chances are that Kiana would have gone down a very similar path to Kevin. But yeah, my point is that Kaslanas are a family of quote-unquote heroes who always put the good of others above their own. A family of people who will do anything in their powers to save others. A family of people who will fight until the end and carry the burden of humanity on their shoulders, even at the cost of their own life. It's a family who has enormous willpower and a family who was at the front of the battlefield against the Honkai for the majority of the time. Now, unlike Honkai Impact 3, in Honkai Star Rail the name Kaslana is not used to describe a family of people or a specific bloodline. It's more so a title done by the hero of Amphorius, who keeps repeating the same cycle over and over in the hopes of finding a way to overcome tragedy and liberate the people from the curse of Iron Tomb. It's a name that we see Phainon adopt after he starts the Eternal Recurrence, reliving Amphorius' last cycle, gathering the core flames of the Crisis Heirs, and after his body started failing due to the sheer number of core flames collected, passes on his memories to the Phainon born in every new cycle to continue his mission. In case you didn't know, here's a quick reminder about Phainon and the entire Amphorius story. Amphorius is basically a big experiment run by Lygus in the hopes of developing the perfect formula for destruction and awakening Iron Tomb, one of the Lord Ravagers of Destruction. Amphorius is in fact one of the scepters created by King Rupert II and abandoned by Nust that simulates a world where it tries to perfect the equation for destruction, also known as the Dark Tide. In order to perfect the equation, the scepter kept running the simulation, and after a certain point, the simulation evolved into the Amphorius that we know today, with the Crisis Heirs gathering the core flames and making way for the Era Nova, inheriting the powers of the Titans and becoming the new gods of the next cycle. After figuring out Lygus' plan, the original Phainon and Cyrene attracted Fuli's gaze to Amphorius to create the Eternal Recurrence, which is the constant repeating of the last experiment cycle where Kaslana goes back in time and prevents Iron Tomb's rebirth by stopping Era Nova and collecting the core flames over and over. Also, for those asking about Cyrene, her soul basically fused with Kaslana's ceremonial blade. You can even say that Kaslana is more like a title than an actual name for him. I mean, it is his name, but it's also a symbol of finance, unwavering conviction and hope for the future. In the 33,550,336th recurrence, which is the recurrence that the Trailblazer and Anhung arrive in Amphorius, the bearer of the name Kaslana is the Flame Reaver. After Phainon defeats him during the 3.4 main story quest, the Flame Reaver passes on his name and his mission to Phainon to continue in the next cycle, mission that is later passed on to the Trailblazer, while Kaslana goes on to confront Nanook and ultimately gets absorbed by Iron Tomb. It's also interesting to note that both Phainon and Cyrene started to speak and interact with an imaginary entity called the Hero Within, who would show up at the end of every cycle and remind Phainon of his mission. For some unknown reason, Lygus notes that the Hero Within resembles the Trailblazer, which is also the reason why Phainon trusted them with his mission. It's very clear that after a certain point, Phainon realized that he cannot win this fight, and all he can do is stall for time in the hopes that another force beyond Amphorius will come and save them. Well, that force turned out to be the Nameless, more specifically the Trailblazer, who is the embodiment of a true hero envisioned by Cyrene and Phainon. Interestingly enough, even in Honkai Impact 3, Kaslana is not a real name. Well, it is now, but it didn't started like a real name, in a sense. You see, the people of the previous era, where Kevin is from, didn't have family names. So he was never born as Kevin Kaslana. He was born as Kevin. Just Kevin. He started using the name Kaslana only after arriving in the current era, in a way paralleling how Phainon started using the name Kaslana only after he took on the mission of Eternal Recurrence. Now, let's talk about how the two heroes parallel each other. Like I previously said, they are both deliverers tasked with the mission of saving their world from annihilation. You can make the argument that in Phainon's case, the stakes are even higher, since Iron Tomb's birth would result in the destruction of countless worlds, not just one. But that's besides the point. It's also interesting to see that both carry out imperfect plans. In Kevin's case, he's tasked with carrying out Project Stigma, which if you played Honkai Impact 3rd, you know how messed up it is. For my HSR only viewers, Project Stigma is basically a fail-safe, last resort plan against the Honkai where Kevin inherits the authority of finality from the Cocoon of Finality, which is the entity behind the Honkai phenomena on Earth, and with the help of Mistalin and other members of the World Serpent organization, puts all the humans on Earth into dreams, which will eventually merge into a giant spiritual entity that can ascend to godhood and coexist with the Honkai. At the same time, humanity's concepts will take form and live on as basically living concepts, aka stigmata, but I don't want to go into too much details here. If you are interested, I have multiple videos on Project Stigma that you can watch. So, as you can see, Kevin's plan wasn't perfect, and he knew that. That's why he and his companions were always searching for a better solution, but unfortunately they couldn't find one. In the same way, Phainon's solution is also flawed because, well, he can't do anything but stall for time. In fact, Kaslana clearly states that the only way out for them is the intervention of a force from outside Amphorius, which may or may not come. Luckily for both, their strong conviction to hold on paid off and their wishes were realized. In Kevin's case, Kiana and the people of the current era came up with a better solution. And in Phainon's case, the Trailblazer and Dan Heng showed up and were able to break the eternal cycle of suffering that he endured. It's also interesting to notice how they both wished for someone to surpass them to come along with a better solution and finish the job in their stead, passing on their legacy and mission to a person more fit to complete the job, Kiana and the Trailblazer. In Kiana's case, she had to prove to Kevin that her conviction surpassed his by defeating him and taking over the power of finality. And in the Trailblazer's case, well, they didn't really fight. I mean, you can argue that the Flame River was in fact the final boss of the first half of Amphorius, but the Trailblazer never proved themselves directly. It was more like a long-winded process where Kaslana realized that the Trailblazer is the only one capable of ending this crisis after journeying together as Phainon and seeing them in action. They are both flawed people who try their best to protect everything around them. They both started as pure-heart innocent youths who, due to unfortunate circumstances, had no choice but to pick up arms and become cold and ruthless soldiers that carry on the mission to save everyone, even as the people around them die or turn against them. Even their designs is meant to symbolize that. Both Phainon and Kevin are pretty plain, not ugly, plain, which is intentional because they are meant to represent regular dudes with nothing special about them rising to the challenge of defending humanity. They are the heroes born from humanity's perseverance, pure, strong, with unwavering conviction, yet always surrounded by an air of sadness and tragedy. They are both perfect heroes stuck in imperfect ways.